Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. This week, we're celebrating International Day of Yoga, which is bringing more awareness on our spiritual, mental health well-being. And as we celebrate Yoga International Day, and yoga means the union of the body, mind, and spirit, I thought it would be great to have a conversation and revisit our ancient teachings and wisdom of our sages, saints, and seers, because their guiding light is still very relevant in our modern day times of turmoil, turbulence, and high anxiety, which has reached pandemic levels. So joining me today in this robust conversation, I have Dr. Purna Prasad. Namaste, Dr. Purna Prasad.
Namaste.
Dr. Purna is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technology Officer for Sterling Universal Group, which provides advanced technology solutions in healthcare. So today we're not talking just about healthcare, we're talking about our spiritual health, because on the state of our spiritual health lies our mental, physical health. So once we are in tune with ourselves and in harmony with nature, that is what true yoga is all about, the union of our body, mind, and spirit. So Dr. Purna, I know you give a lot of talks on Vedic scriptures, and I have attended a lot of your talks as well. So as we celebrate International Day of Yoga, let's talk about the lessons that we can learn from Bhagwad Gita, because Bhagwad Gita talks about three paths. We're talking of the path of devotion, which is bhakti yoga, path of action, which is karma yoga, selfless action, love and selfless action, and also the path of knowledge, jnana yoga. So once we have the knowledge, we can do selfless service, and we have that faith and surrender to the Supreme. That is when we're in the state of inner bliss and peace. So let's hear from you, Dr. Purna, the lessons. Let's talk with the first lesson that we can learn from the Bhagwad Gita.
Dr. Renee Mehrra, thank you very much for this opportunity. A very auspicious day to talk about the learnings from the Bhagwad Gita, especially from the yogic angle. Yoga, as you said, has many facets to it, many dimensions to it. In majority of the cases, yoga is understood to be just a form of exercise. But Krishna makes it very clear, the Upanishads makes it very clear, Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear that yoga is far, far beyond that. Yoga, as you very rightly pointed out, has two components or two dimensions. Number one is that which involves the body, and the second one, that which involves the mind, the intellect, and the experiential learning, all put together called the spirit, right? So what is yoga? Yoga itself is so beautifully defined by Krishna. Krishna says yoga means it is a procedure to do puja, to do yajna. Yajna means yajadeva puja. So when we talk about yoga, it is basically the disciplining of the physical and the psychological. For what? For realizing the self. And this realization of the self, the process of realization of the self, is the intent behind the yoga. Yaja Deva Puja is yagna, yagna is yoga. You can sit in all the different postures, on all the hundreds of exercises, but if the mind is not completely involved, engaged, in order to bring that mediation between the body, the inner spirit, and the self, then that yoga becomes just a physical exercise and stays at a very superficial level.
And as you rightly said, it's the mind. That's the toughest challenge that we have, that if we can get our mind to follow our Atman, our soul. That's the way we can go with it. And many times we just say, I want this, I want that. If we get the I out, and we get that selflessness and get the selfishness out, and the want is the desire, and then we can get the happiness that we're looking for, the inner peace and happiness.
Right? We are put on this earth through this gross body. He gives us all this ultimate, all-encompassing energy. Paramatma gives us this Atma to reside in this gross body. We go through the actions according to our karma, and then we iterate it to our next birth. So here Krishna says, be aware of this journey, be an active participant, and see the power of that all-encompassing energy through which you will be able to understand first the self and then the supreme.
Right. So once we know who we truly are, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, we know our purpose in life, we can live a fuller life. But somewhere we go astray. And as you talked about it, if we can make our mind our friend, so then it's easy to work around with the mind as an ally to get that concentration and that focus. So I guess because we have so much of clutter in our mind, and through meditation, being in that moment, so we make that as a habit, I think the mind will then start to understand that's what we want, and we'll be able to move in that direction that we're looking for.
So as we discussed, meditation, as you pointed out, can be done at any time. But what exactly is meditation? Meditation is really not very difficult, but one should know how to start meditating. And the simplest way to start, Krishna himself teaches that in Bhagwad Gita, is to let mind see everything that comes through it, but not get attached to any one occurrence, right? When you close your eyes, your mind starts seeing all the pictures, the visuals, the episodes that you have experienced, which is being replayed by your memory, chitta, because anything you see, hear, touch, smell, taste gets recorded. And when it gets recorded, it has to be played back. So as the memory plays back, Krishna says, experience it, just see it, don't get attached to it. But as you sit in this inner visualization of the self, there comes a time when all the recorded images are played back, and the mind slowly starts seeing this clarity, because it is able to really get in touch with what you call as the self or the Atman. That is step number one. Step number two is to get to this stage more often, right? In the morning, in the evening. And then third thing, to stay in that stage. And that is where Krishna says, you will start experiencing the intuitional flashes from outside, because the mind has nothing else to experience from inside. It's a very tricky thing to explain, but a beautiful thing to experience. Sometimes what you experience cannot be articulated.
Absolutely. I think words are too feeble, because that's experiential. And when we take that inner journey, and as you rightly said, when we talk about working in a detached way, so when we do our duty, when we have to do our work, let's not think about the results, but that's where we need to surrender. I think that's a very important lesson. Surrender to the higher state of consciousness, because that's not in our control.
Absolutely. That's 100% correct. Even, you and I being in the clinical field, we know very clearly that to lift a hand, what's the amount of physiological and anatomical work that has to happen inside the body, right? The nervous system, the muscular action, the whole 9 yards. The thought has to get translated into action. We take it for granted because we are put in an environment which basically does this without us being conscious about it. But what Krishna is saying is, remember, there are a lot of enabling forces that makes you function both anatomically, physiologically, and spiritually. And that all-encompassing energy that has put you in this environment, given you this wherewithal, is that supreme. That is me in the form of pure knowledge. And there you start really seeing, oh, okay, you can call it God, you can call it enabler, you can call it something that basically makes incidents happen. Doesn't matter, because anything you call is the formation of an expression of that all-encompassing energy. Because if you just put a telescope, Dr. Mehrra, you know what's going to happen. You feel so small because look at the entire universe that is being enabled. So there is that enabling force inside. And what can we do? We can only serve the greater good with the capabilities that have been endowed to us. That's the reason you very rightly said, do your duty, don't worry about the result, because what has to happen will happen. The way you are enabled to perform an action is the only way you can perform the action. There is no other way. And there is a little bit of a deeper thought here. Krishna says, and that is predetermined. Something that majority of us have a lot of problem conceptualizing.
Right. There's so much of jealousy, greed, anger. All this is so toxic, and that mental toxicity creates a lot of problems in our physical health, in our mental health, and puts a block in our spiritual well-being.
Yeah, again, very simple. When he tells Arjuna, he says, look, do your duty, because you and I are put on this earth, even he includes himself, which actually is pretty funny, in order to protect the greater good called as dharma, right? We, even if you have to kill, you kill because that act of killing is to support the greater good. Killing by itself is neither good nor bad. It is the intent behind the killing, right? If you have to kill a lion that is charging at 20 people, that's the right thing to do. But if you want to kill a lion just because you want to have fun, that is bad. That's not dharma. So the intent part of it becomes very, very, very important.
I think respecting all creation, I think that's so very important. For me, that is very important, respecting all creation. And at the level of the soul, we are all one. But somewhere we forgot and we put labels to ourselves. And that's why we're living in this age of turmoil and turbulence, because we think they are different from us or we are superior to them. But we are all the same at the level of the soul. We want to be children of conscience. So I think unity is so very important to understand, and respecting all creation. And that respect comes once we realize that we are all, at the level of the soul, all one.
Absolutely. The unity of action to serve humanity is the prime motive behind the entire teaching of Bhagwad Gita. It is the greater good. And in order to achieve this greater good, you basically use the utilities that you're endowed with, is to discharge the action with the good intent and leave the end result to what it is supposed to be, because we don't know. Even today, when we are saying, hey, are you going to take this project? Yes. You think you'll be successful, oh, we will try our best. If somebody says, I'm 100% positive I'll be successful, that's not a very wise decision, because you may be, you may be not. And Krishna makes it very clear to Arjuna while going to the battle. He says, we may win, we may lose. If we win, we are able to give the kingdom back to the righteous world. If we lose and die, we basically will be martyrs, because we'll be recognized and we will be valued for this great work we did in order to save dharma, during which we sacrificed, made the ultimate sacrifice.
I think when we're talking about the battlefield that's there in the Bhagwad Gita, we're talking about, what about the battlefield that is inside us? All the demons and the toxicity that goes on. We're fighting those on a daily basis. And I think that's very important to realize in today's world, because if we can fight off those demons of greed and anger and jealousy and all that creates a toxicity in us, then we're able to live a righteous path. So I think there are two levels we're talking of. One is the actual battlefield that's in the scriptures, and the other one is the battlefield inside us.
Absolutely right. And the scripture says that you are the reflection of what you experience outside.
Yeah.
The physical.
What we see outside is you. That's what it is. Yes.
The physical Kurukshetra, the physical Kshetra is your body itself. You've got the 5 great virtues fighting against 100 demons. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada. It goes on and on. And those 5 Jnanendriyas, which is telling you, see the right thing, do the right thing, smell the right thing, taste the right thing, and touch the right thing, number 1. Number 2, do it because it serves humanity. When you take the self out and put service to others in its place, then the entire living becomes a puja, becomes a yajna, becomes a yoga.
Yeah. Like my spiritual mentor always says, be good, do good, be one.
Yep.
In the outer world, in the physical world, 1 + 1 is actually 2, but in the inner world, 1 + 1 is 1. And I think that's such a profound way of looking at life. We all look at it that way. There'll be so much of peace. And peace starts with each one of us. If we are peaceful, we radiate that peace outside to the world around. And I think so that's so very important to cultivate that inner peace. And that comes through introspection and reflection and meditation. And I think when we revisit the scriptures, I think it nudges us back to go back to our inner divinity that's in each one of us. The inner spark is always there, but we have such layers and layers of illusion that has been covered. And we forget to realize that we all have that divinity in us, that's innate in each one of us. And I think that is a lesson that I feel very strongly about.
Absolutely. So Krishna basically says there are 3 layers that are the 3 forces you should be very careful about, and not only understand them, but surpass them. That is I, me, and myself.
Mm.
And these 3 result in what is called as ego. And then my Guruji, Dr. Bananjay Govindacharya, that you see behind me, used to say, in order to see G-O-D, the E has to go. So if you take the E out and the D comes in the end, then you basically, transform from selfishness to selflessness.
So true, very true. And that transformation can only come once we really understand who we truly are, and what our purpose in life is. But many of times we go through this again and again because unless we get it right, we're going to keep coming back.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that's a great point, because we are always worried about our neighbors, which is good. But the way we worry is, how do our neighbors perceive us? There's a certain amount of superior perception that we want ourselves to be reflected in the minds of our neighbors. So we put on a mask. And that mask not only dupes our neighbors, it even dupes us. Because after a certain time, we consider or we assume that that is reality. So what Krishna did to Arjuna is to tear that mask out and put a mirror in front of him. And he said, look at the mirror, Arjuna. Look who you are. And second thing, look why you are put in this world. And number three, realize what you have to do in order to establish the greater good dharma and protect and save this world from the evil forces of the Kauravas and all their atrocities that had destroyed the world by the time. Right. It's a self-reflection, because Krishna says, you are a reflection of me. The only problem is you don't realize that. And here I'm trying to almost dissect and remove those layers and show you that I'm right here, with you.
Right. And another great lesson, Dr. Purna, is like, only thing in life that is permanent is change. And we often forget that. And that's why we are stuck either in grief or in thinking that this happiness will continue, or whatever it is. We think that is going to be there forever, not realizing nothing is permanent except for change. And I think that's a very big lesson to learn during this time.
Universe is always expanding. Right? The modern physics shows us. Not only is universe expanding and changing, even the beings inside the universe are changing. We actually change from the first minute to the second minute to the third minute. Upanishad says every sunset people enjoy, but there is another very harsh reality that is one step towards your end, which is your death, which is, it's not your jiva or your spirit that's going to die. It's just this aging body. Because the aging body is made up of these 5 basic elements, it goes away. But what you do, what you gather in terms of knowledge and what you do in terms of karma stays with you for every birth and escalates you to the higher level of the being. So that change is there. Only with change can you grow to the higher levels. That is what Upanishad means. As Albert Einstein said, if you want to retain your balance, you should keep pedaling. If you stop pedaling, the balance is gone and you fall down and become static.
And to reset that balance, we need to go within, inside. And that's the journey we often forget. We think, okay, when we grow older, we will take this path of understanding who we truly are. And by that time, it might be too late. Yes. So I think it's so very important to teach young kids, how to enhance their spiritual quotient, so that as they grow into young adults and as they grow, they grow with that knowledge that nothing in life is permanent but change, that there's inclusion, there's equality, and there's unity at the level of the soul. All this, I think, should be taught in schools, and so that we should rethink how our education system should be for our young kids, so that they are able to live a life that is more peaceful and not get into violence, and because that creates a lot of trauma as well. So there's so much that goes on, and I think it's so very important to bring that spiritual quotient back in our children as it was during the ancient times.
No, absolutely. That's a great point. And also, if you look at certain prescribed practices in the Vedic literature, they say as soon as a mother gets pregnant or the girl gets pregnant to become a mother, start caring for the fetus because the fetus can hear. Sing to the fetus. Always talk about good things. Talk about spiritual things, because when the fetus is growing, you will be able to influence the spiritual growth of the fetus, which is very, very important. That's why in the olden days, in the ancient times, pregnant women were always asked to meditate, stay in a very calm environment, hear good things, hear spirituality, hear good songs. Music has a huge impact, and that comes from the Samaveda. So, our spiritual practices, the wisdom of the ancients, unfortunately, we have forgotten. And to your point, we need to rekindle that. And now we can understand it better with the tools of modern science, because the modern science is saying, be careful. If you get upset when you're pregnant, the fetus is going to suffer the consequences of it. You do your drugs, the fetus actually ends up in a drug syndrome. You basically do alcohol, you drink alcohol, then you got the fetal alcohol syndrome. These are very difficult to treat. So the growth starts with the fetus developing. That is when the education has to start. And if you look at our ancient literature, it shows so clearly that a child which has got that, almost I would call it as, fetal education, always comes out as a good citizen. And maybe we should hope that that would be one of the powerful solutions in our armamentarium to prevent senseless violence when the kids grow up.
So what advice would you give to parents? It's so very important that first parents have to be role models for the children. If they don't inculcate all these virtues in themselves, children they really are very astute. If they see that, hey, my parents are not even doing what they're telling me to do, they will never walk that path. So what advice would you give to parents?
Yeah, when the parents decide to have a kid, they have enormous amount of responsibility in addition to what they think they have. It's not just feeding the kid, sending it to school. It is what type of spiritual and mental well-being you basically inculcate. And for that, you need to walk the talk.
Yeah.
Stop demonstrating your bad habits. If possible, start cutting down. Smoking, drinking, doing drugs, being in a violent environment. That harmony needs to be achieved even before couples get pregnant. And here, clinical literature has shown the early adoption of practices like meditation, good eating, healthy eating habits, exercise, not only tunes the body, but also the mind and the spirit. So when the couple get pregnant, there is direct effect on the fetus, because the fetus starts growing, and it is growing inside in an environment that is surrounded by these vibrations. So when it is born, it basically has its first day at school, because the minute it opens the eyes, becomes sensitive to the sound, smells the surroundings, tastes the food, and then is able to feel the touch of the parents, it has to have spirituality built into it. Spirituality is not a religion. Spirituality is the creation of a very harmonious environment, which is completely endowed with peace. That's why in Veda they say, ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Peaceful environment to us and to the kids is our responsibility, and that is the greater good that positively impacts the entire universe. So that is where the education has to start. It is good to pass laws against everything, against everybody, but it is a day late and a dollar short. You don't want, reactive steps. You want proactive measures that will have a positive impact right at the beginning, at the node, at the very, time, place, and the environment of birth.
That's right. And I think they should be taught was an entire family. That's what our scriptures talk about. And truth is one, sages call it by different names. Ekam Satya Prabhuda Vedanti. I think it's so very important for our young ones to understand and appreciate all these tenets that, that have been brought down from ancient times. And they're so very relevant in today's times because they are timeless wisdom. That's timeless teachings. So lastly, Dr. Purna, tell us I would like to hear from you, what is the most important tenet or principle that you have imbibed from the scriptures? I know there's so many, but the most important one.
The most important one that resonates inside me through my journey so far as a student of Vedic scriptures is to keep developing and enhancing my awareness, to become aware of the external world, the forces that are enabling this beautiful mechanics and that magic that happens outside, and that wonderful magic that happens inside me, and the pursuit to understand who Purna Prasad is. Now, Dr. Renee calls me Purna. I say, hi, Dr. Renee, how are you? But that is just a name that I have. But who am I? Why am I here? Where did I come from? Where am I going? That is what fascinates me every day when I get up in the morning and become aware of myself.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Purna. It's so very important as we celebrate International Day of Yoga this week. It's not just about postures, yoga postures, or physical exercise. It's about going within as well and taking that journey to understand our spiritual being that is so very important, and to enhance that spiritual quotient so that we can become all stewards of peace and good health and pass it on to the next generation. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.